The first thing the ship did when it pulled him in was pretend it hadn't. No alarms, no dramatic red lights, no heroic sirens screaming like dying animals in a vacuum. Just a gentle shift in gravity, like the universe had leaned slightly to one side to make room for a mistake it wasn't ready to explain. The human soldier felt it through his boots first. The deck didn't tilt, it negotiated. His knees adjusted automatically, the way they always did after long deployments where the ground kept changing its mind about being solid. A soft voice came through the corridor speakers. "Welcome aboard." The soldier blinked. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's usually what they say right before something explodes." No explosion followed. That alone was suspicious. The corridor around him was not metal in any traditional sense. It was more like the idea of metal had been interpreted by something that had only read about it in poetry. Thin luminous veins ran through translucent walls, pulsing faintly as if the ship had a heartbeat and was mildly embarrassed about it. Every few meters, the structure rearranged itself in small, almost shy adjustments, doors deciding they were actually further down the hall, corners reconsidering their geometry. A maintenance drone floated past him. It paused. It turned, it scanned him. Then, after a long silence that felt personally judgmental, it displayed a single blinking symbol that translated roughly into, "Oh." The soldier raised a hand. "Yeah, same." The drone drifted away faster than necessary, like it had remembered an urgent appointment elsewhere in the universe. He kept walking. The escort wasn't visible, but it was present in the way the air slightly insisted on guiding him forward. Not forceful, just persuasive. Like a parent trying to convince a stubborn child that yes, brushing teeth is still mandatory in this timeline. The soldier adjusted the strap of his armor. It creaked in response, a sound like old machinery complaining about being emotionally involved. "You're holding up well," he said to it. "For something that has survived 3 wars, 2 political betrayals, and 1 very aggressive vending machine incident." The armor did not respond. It rarely did, unless something was on fire. Ahead, the corridor widened into a chamber so large it felt like stepping into an indoor sky. Floating structures drifted in slow orbit, platforms, translucent arches, suspended fragments of what might have been architecture or memory. At the center was a raised dais, and on it sat the reason the entire ship felt like it was holding its breath. The alien queen. She looked human at first glance, but only if the glance was from far away in bad lighting and possibly during emotional distress. Her form was humanoid, yes, balanced, elegant, composed, but her ears were long, sweeping backward like curved blades of pale light. They moved subtly, constantly, responding to things no one else seemed able to hear. Her eyes held a reflective depth, like polished obsidian that had learned how to think. She didn't stand when he entered. She didn't need to. A few figures flanked her, court advisors, officers, beings with bodies adapted to varying degrees of impossible environments. One of them had too many joints. Another seemed to be partially made of static. They all looked at the soldier the way people look at outdated software, with curiosity, concern, and mild fear that it might still open itself. The queen spoke first. "This is the human." Her voice was calm, but it carried layered harmonics, as if several versions of her were speaking in slightly different emotional states. The soldier gave a small nod. "That's what they keep calling me, yeah." A pause. One of the advisors leaned toward another and whispered something that sounded like a weather forecast for regret. The queen's gaze moved over his armor. It lingered. It judged. The soldier could practically hear the internal calculation. Weight distribution, material efficiency, aesthetic value, probable failure rate. Finally, she said, "Your protective shell appears tired." The soldier looked down at himself. A scorched plate near his shoulder gave a faint crackling sound, as if agreeing. "Yeah," he said. "We've been through a lot together, mostly against our will." A few faint sounds, laughter or something attempting to become laughter, rippled through the court. The queen's ears tilted slightly. Amusement detected. Noted. She rose slowly, descending from the dais without touching it, as if gravity was a suggestion she occasionally accepted for politeness. She circled him. The ship adjusted lighting subtly, like it was trying to improve the mood. The soldier stayed still. "Do you always stare at guests like this?" he asked. "Only the interesting ones," she replied. "That's flattering, I think." "You are not optimized for survival presentation," she continued, ignoring him completely. "Your equipment is inconsistent, your posture indicates fatigue, your armor suggests repeated structural failure." He nodded. Yeah, well, I'd like to meet the guy who never had a structural failure and ask him what his secret is. Probably paperwork. One of the advisors made a sound that might have been disapproval or choking on suppressed amusement. The queen stopped in front of him. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she said, "Remove your outer plating." The chamber quieted. The soldier tilted his head slightly. That's usually a third-date request in my experience. No one reacted. He sighed. All right, but if I get judged again, I'm filing a complaint with whoever's in charge of cosmic hospitality. He began unfastening the armor, piece by piece. The room seemed to lean in without physically moving. When the final plate came free, there was no dramatic reveal, no heroic music, no cinematic moment of transformation. Just scars, not one or two. Not neat lines or symbolic marks. Layers of them. Intersections of survival written in the language of things that were not supposed to be survived. Some were old, pale, and settled like forgotten arguments. Others were newer, still carrying the faint trace of battles that had not fully ended in memory. The queen's expression shifted. Not shock, recognition. Her ears moved slightly forward as if listening to something the scars were saying without permission. The soldier flexed his shoulder once, rolling it. Before you ask, no, they don't hurt anymore. They just complain in different weather systems. A pause, then one of the advisors whispered, "That is statistically impossible." The soldier shrugged. So was most of my Tuesday. The queen stepped closer, closer than protocol should allow. She extended a hand, stopping just short of touching one of the scars. "You were rebuilt," she said. "Recycled," he corrected. Rebuilt sounds too optimistic. Something shifted in the air of the chamber. Not tension exactly, something more careful, like curiosity trying not to become respect too quickly and scare itself off. The queen looked at him for a long time. Then she said softly, "And yet you remain functional." The soldier considered that. "I wouldn't use the word functional," he said. "I'd go with legally ambiguous." For the first time, the queen's mouth curved slightly. Not a full smile. Just the beginning of one, like a thought that hadn't decided whether it wanted to become emotion yet. Behind her, the ship adjusted its orbit almost imperceptibly, as if it had become interested in the conversation. And for reasons no one in the room could yet define, the judgment had stopped feeling like an ending. It had started feeling like the beginning of a problem nobody understood how to solve. The ship decided to scan him at the exact moment he was trying not to look impressed. He had learned long ago that looking impressed in front of alien technology usually led to someone either trying to recruit you, dissect you, or sell you something with limited-time cosmic exclusivity. So he stood there casually, as if being inside a living interstellar vessel made of semi-conscious architecture was something he experienced every Tuesday between lunch and existential crisis. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. The same calm voice returned. "Biometric analysis initiated." The soldier sighed. "Of course it is." One of the advisors tilted its head. "You are not resisting." "I'm tired," he said. "I resisted a lot of things earlier in my career. Taxes, authority, a swarm of weaponized algae once. I'm out of resistance credits." The queen stood a few steps away watching him. Her long ears shifted slightly, catching every micro-sound in the room. She did not interrupt. She simply observed the way the ship's light traced across the scars on his exposed skin like it was trying to read a language it had never been taught. The scanning field passed over him. Nothing dramatic happened at first. Then the ship paused, not metaphorically, physically. The ambient hum of the vessel dropped half a tone like a choir forgetting its sheet music. The soldier frowned. "That normal?" A small panel of floating symbols appeared in front of him. They flickered rapidly, reorganizing themselves repeatedly as if embarrassed by their own conclusions. One of the advisors leaned forward. "The system is recalibrating." The soldier nodded. "Cool. I also recalibrate emotionally after breakfast. Usually involves caffeine and regret." The queen did not react to the joke, but her ears did. They tilted forward again, interest increased. The scan resumed. This time the air around him felt denser. Not heavier exactly, but more attentive, like the ship had stopped pretending to multitask. A second later, the system spoke again. "Anomaly detected." The soldier raised a hand. "Yeah, that's me. Hello, nice to meet me." The advisor made a sharp clicking sound that translated loosely as concern. The queen stepped closer. "Define anomaly," she said. The ship hesitated before responding. "Structural survival probability exceeds modeled threshold by 742%. There was a pause in the chamber so complete it felt like even the molecules were pretending not to exist. The soldier blinked. That sounds excessive. I prefer persistent inconvenience as a label. One of the floating drones drifted backward slightly as if trying to distance itself from the math. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain," she said. The ship complied, and the air filled with layered projections. Battlefields that didn't match known star charts, energy signatures that bent in ways geometry shouldn't allow, fragments of wars that seemed to overlap each other like badly edited memories. The soldier watched quietly. "Oh," he said, "you found that one?" A pause, another projection, a different war, different physics rules, different version of survival entirely, he sighed. "Okay, that one I'd like to officially deny involvement in, but unfortunately I was there." One advisor whispered, "He admits exposure without distress." "I've had time," the soldier said. The Queen stepped even closer now, circling him again, but differently this time. Less judgment, more recalculation. "You have been present in conflict zones classified as non-repeatable," she said. "Yeah," he replied. "Those are the fun ones. No sequel potential, very exclusive experience." One of the advisors made a sound that might have been a nervous laugh or malfunctioning oxygen intake. The Queen's ears flicked again. She was learning something about him she did not yet have a category for. The ship shifted visuals again. Now the scans focused on his scars. Each one was highlighted individually, analyzed, compared against galactic medical archives, ancient war databases, even theoretical injury models that assumed no living subject would ever reach them. The system hesitated again. Then, "Subject contains layered survival signatures from incompatible temporal conflict zones." The soldier scratched the back of his neck. "That sounds like a fancy way of saying I've had a bad travel schedule." The Queen turned slightly toward him. "You are not from a single war," she said. He shrugged. "Depends on who's asking. My paperwork would say yes. My scars would say, please stop asking." A faint ripple of amusement passed through the chamber again. Not laughter, more like the concept of humor being reluctantly acknowledged. The ship continued. Another projection appeared. This one showed something even the advisors seemed uneasy about. A battlefield where light bent away from impact zones, where time appeared to lag behind explosions, where structures rebuilt themselves in reverse just to collapse again out of spite. The soldier nodded at it. "Oh yeah, that place." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "You remember it clearly." "I remember most of them," he said. "Not always in order. Sometimes they argue about sequence in my head at night." One of the advisors leaned toward another. "His cognitive stability is," the soldier cut in, "surprisingly intact. Yeah, I get that a lot. I think it's the humor, keeps things from organizing properly." The Queen studied him silently. Then she asked, "Why did you not terminate?" He looked at her for a moment. "Short answer or honest answer?" "Both," he nodded. "Short answer, I tried." A pause. "Honest answer. Everything I tried to end refused to agree I was allowed to leave first." The chamber grew quieter. Even the ship seemed to soften its projection intensity, as if unsure whether it had just witnessed a statistic or a confession. The Queen's expression shifted again, something subtle like understanding trying to form but still assembling the correct emotional grammar. "You were never reinforced with standard survival augmentation," she said. "Nope. You were not engineered. Also nope. You were not selected for compatibility." He gave a small smile. "Definitely nope. I was mostly selected by accident and poor timing." One of the advisors made a sound like it had just lost confidence in reality. The Queen stopped circling him. For the first time, she faced him directly without movement. "Then explain," she said, quieter now, "why you persist." The soldier exhaled slowly. "Honestly," he said, "bad habit." A pause, then he added, "Also, I keep forgetting to stop." Something shifted in the room again, not the ship, not the projections, something in the Queen's attention. Her ears tilted slightly inward, not toward sound, but toward thought. The system projected one final data point, a survival curve that made no sense, a line that refused to decline, a pattern that should have ended hundreds of times. But didn't. The advisor finally spoke, voice cautious. "This subject should not remain operational." The soldier nodded. "Yeah, I've had that feedback before, usually from enemies, occasionally from doctors. Once from a toaster, but that was a misunderstanding." A faint flicker of amusement crossed the Queen's face again, quicker this time. Then she stepped closer, close enough now that the soldier could see the subtle luminescence in her skin responding to the ship's ambient light. close enough that her presence felt less like authority and more like gravity deciding to pay attention. "You are not stable," she said. He shrugged. "Neither is the universe, but we keep scheduling it anyway." That got a reaction. A small one, but real. Her ears moved slightly upward, and for the first time since he entered the ship, the Queen did not look at him as a problem to classify. She looked at him as a question that had been surviving far too long without an answer. The ship stopped pretending it was just a ship. It didn't announce it. It simply began to breathe differently. The corridors that once shifted like uncertain thoughts now aligned into something stable, as if the vessel had decided that ambiguity was no longer useful. The light softened. The humming systems no longer sounded like they were debating whether reality was optional. The soldier noticed first because his boots stopped arguing with the floor. "That's new," he said quietly. The Queen stood beside him. She had not moved away since the last scan cycle. Her long ears angled subtly, tracking changes in the ship's internal state the way predators track weather. "It is responding to you," she said. He glanced at her. "That feels like something I should be nervous about." "You should," one of the advisors said from behind them, then immediately sounded as if it regretted existing. The soldier exhaled. "Great, I've been promoted to cosmic weather event." But there was no hostility in the chamber anymore. The tension that had once wrapped around him like a diagnostic tool had unraveled, replaced by something stranger, a tension without judgment. The Queen turned toward the central command interface. The floating projections now showed no battlefields, no historical scars of war analysis. Instead, they displayed him, his survival patterns, his injury timelines, his improbable persistence, reconstructed into a living map. Not as data to be judged, as a pattern to be understood. The ship spoke once more, but this time its tone had changed. Subject identified as persistent continuity anomaly. The soldier raised a hand. "I'd like to formally object to the word anomaly. I prefer consistent inconvenience with emotional depth." A faint pause followed, then unexpectedly one of the ship's subroutines responded. "Designation updated." The soldier blinked. "Oh, that worked." The Queen's ears tilted slightly. "You negotiate with systems?" "I negotiate with everything," he said. "It's either that or punching the universe, and I've found the universe does not respect physical feedback." The advisors shifted uncomfortably, as if trying to decide whether he was dangerous or just exhausting. The Queen stepped forward. "You were never the problem," she said. The soldier snorted softly. "Careful." That's the kind of sentence that usually leads to paperwork or assassination attempts. But she continued. "You were evaluated as a failure of structure, of design, of predictability." He shrugged. "That part's fair." The Queen looked at him more directly now, her expression no longer measuring him against expectations, but against reality itself. "And yet," she said, "you remain." A pause settled between them. The ship around them stabilized further. Even the floating platforms stopped drifting, as if they had finally received clear instructions after years of bad management. The soldier scratched his wrist lightly. "If it helps, I didn't really plan to remain. It just kept happening." One of the advisors muttered, "That is the most terrifying survival strategy I have ever heard." He nodded. "Yeah, I've been told I'm not very strategic. More like accidental persistence." The Queen considered this. Then she did something that made the chamber collectively unsure how to respond. She laughed, not loud, not performative. Just a brief, genuine break in her composure that rippled through her long ears and seemed to momentarily confuse the ship's emotional interpretation systems. The soldier blinked. "Okay, I was not prepared for that outcome." "I was not either," she admitted. That, more than anything, seemed to settle something in the room. The ship recalibrated again. This time not in response to threat or analysis, but in response to agreement. The Queen turned to the soldier fully now. "What happens to you when you are not in war?" she asked. He hesitated. "That depends," he said. "Do you mean physically or existentially?" "Both." He thought about it for a moment. "I usually get confused," he said honestly. "I check if I'm missing something, like a war I forgot to attend, or a bullet I was supposed to still be running away from." The Queen studied him. "And if there is none?" He shrugged. "Then I look for maintenance issues, personal ones, emotional firmware updates. Sometimes I fix a chair that doesn't need fixing just to feel like reality is still operational." A pause. Then quieter, he added, "Still working on that part." The Queen's gaze softened in a way that made her look less like a sovereign and more like someone recalculating their entire understanding of survival. You were never meant to endure this long, she said. He nodded. That's kind of my brand at this point. The ship displayed a final analysis layer, not a warning, not a threat. A conclusion. The soldier's survival pattern was not random. It was adaptive repetition. Not engineered, not designed, but evolved through exposure to incompatible conditions that should have erased continuity. Instead, continuity adapted. He was not a weapon, not a relic, not a mistake. He was persistence learning how to argue with extinction and occasionally winning by refusing to end the conversation. The Queen turned off the projection with a small gesture. Silence returned. Then she said, "What do you want?" The question landed heavier than any scan or analysis. The soldier blinked. "That's a dangerous question," he said. "I am aware." He looked around the chamber, at the stabilized ship, at the advisors who now looked less alarmed and more uncertain, at the systems that no longer treated him as an error. Then he looked back at her. "I want," he said slowly, "a moment where I'm not being evaluated for survivability. A pause, and maybe," he added, "a chair that doesn't feel like it's planning to betray me." One of the advisors immediately said, "We can provide that." The soldier pointed at them. "That was too fast. That means you already had betrayal-ready chairs." The advisor hesitated. "We prefer flexibility in furniture." The Queen actually smiled this time. The ship almost imperceptibly adjusted nearby architecture. A seat formed beside them, not ceremonial, not interrogative, just present. The soldier sat. Carefully, it did not attack him. He exhaled. "Incredible, a chair that respects boundaries, I might cry." "You will not," the Queen said, still watching him. "Probably not," he agreed. "But emotionally, I'm applauding." The chamber relaxed further. The ship system ceased running constant diagnostic loops. For the first time, they idled. The Queen remained standing for a moment, then finally sat beside him, not above him, not opposite him, just beside. Her long ears tilted slightly toward him. "You will remain here?" she asked. He considered it. "No," he said. "I don't think I'm built for staying in one place. I start to rust emotionally." The Queen nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. "But you will return," she said. He smiled faintly. "That depends. Does your ship always try to judge people's armor?" The Queen glanced at him. "Only the interesting ones." He sighed. "That's going to be a recurring problem for me, isn't it?" "Most likely." A pause, then softer. "You were judged incorrectly," she said. The soldier leaned back slightly in the chair. "Happens a lot. I've been mistaken for a warning sign, a malfunction, and once for an educational exhibit." The Queen's expression shifted again, but this time there was no recalculation left to do, only understanding. "Your scars are not failure," she said. He looked down at them briefly. "Nah," he said, "they're receipts." The Queen tilted her head. "Receipts?" "Proof I paid for staying," he said simply. Silence followed, but it was no longer heavy. The ship continued to stabilize around them, settling into a new operational logic, one where survival was not measured only in efficiency, but in persistence that defied classification. The Queen finally spoke again. "You changed the ship." The soldier laughed softly. "I didn't mean to." "That is consistent," she said. He glanced at her. "Is that your version of humor?" "It is improving." He nodded approvingly. "You're doing great. Next step is sarcasm." "It's mostly just emotional armor with better marketing." The Queen considered this seriously. "I will study sarcasm." "Don't overdo it," he said. "It can lead to diplomacy issues." The ship hummed gently, almost content. And for the first time since he had been pulled aboard, the soldier felt something unfamiliar settle behind his ribs. Not survival, not alertness, not readiness for the next disaster, just continuation, not because something demanded it, but because, for once, nothing was trying to end it. The Queen stood after a while, her long ears lifting slightly as she listened to the ship's stabilized rhythm. "You are no longer evaluated," she said. The soldier nodded slowly. "Good." I was starting to feel underdressed for judgment. She turned to leave, then paused. Without looking back, she added, "If you return, you will not be judged." He raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like a challenge." "It is not." A beat, then softer. "It is a change." He watched her go, the ship now moving around her like a system that had finally learned cooperation instead of scrutiny.